Take heed, or, as Ben Franklin said, at least I think that's who said it, a word to the wise is sufficient. Actually, if you get to chasing that down, it's kind of hard to find where he got it from. The Talmud supposedly records something similar to that. Anyway, he said a lot of very interesting things. Before we get to Luke 21, I thought I would share a few of those things with you, because they really are wise. And of course, Ben Franklin was not a Christian so far as we know. He was an adulterous, well, I'll leave that for another time. But anyway, he came from a Christian worldview. He came from a time when people had a Christian worldview. So, early to bed, early to rise makes a man, and I would say probably a woman too, healthy, wealthy, and wise. And I like this one maybe best of all. When you are finished changing, you're finished. There's a lot of truth in that. He said, either write something worth reading or do something worth writing. That's pretty good. Early to bed and early to rise makes, we already covered that one. I doubled up on it. How did I do that? Beware of little expenses. A small leak will sink a great ship. Someone told me once, if you pay attention to your pennies, the dollars will take care of themselves. That was my father. Well done is better than well said. Or as I like to say, talk is cheap. I like this one. We are all born ignorant, but one must work hard to remain stupid. Boy, that describes some people I bet you know. Remember not only to say the right thing in the right place, but far more difficult still, to leave unsaid the wrong thing at the tempting moment. When you're testing to see how deep the water is, don't use both feet. To succeed, jump as quickly at opportunities as you do at conclusions. Okay, take heed. This is what Jesus said many times in the Gospels, and we're going to look at it in Luke chapter 21 and verse 29. And he spake unto them a parable. Behold, the fig tree and all the trees. In other words, this is just a general principle of fruit growing. Behold the fig tree, which of course is Israel. When they now shoot forth, you see and know of your own selves that summer is now nigh at hand. Okay, so you know what that means, right? We've covered this. This is a parable about Israel. When you see Israel spring to life again, which it did in 1948, summer is nigh. Verse 32, verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass away till all be fulfilled. In other words, the generation that sees that happen, 1948 and following, is the generation that will see Jesus' return. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my word shall not pass away. And take heed to yourselves, lest at any time your hearts be overcharged with surfeiting and drunkenness and cares of this life, and so that day come upon you unawares. For as a snare it shall come on all them that dwell on the face of the earth. Watch ye therefore, and pray always, that ye may be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall come to pass, and to stand before the Son of Man. So, Jesus is giving private interpretation about the end times, and he gives these pieces of advice to the disciples, and they speak to us as well. So these are going to become far more important during the tribulation time. These are actually directed at the disciples during the tribulation time. But as we see these things coming, these are hints of truth for us. In other words, take heed. Pay attention. He says, watch in verse 36, therefore, and pray always. You know, when I have seasons like this, and I go outside and it's cold, And I think about what if, you know what SHTF is in the prepping world? SHTF. Stuff hits the fan. Right? So when stuff hits the fan, World War III, Canadian Prime Minister becomes the American Prime Minister, whatever it might be. When that happens and I no longer have anything, am I going to be able to find food and start a fire and keep warm? And it makes me think of what Jesus said. Jesus' words are not idle at all. He said, pray that when you have to bug out, it not be in the wintertime. That's what he said. So if you had to leave home with just a shirt on your back, pray that it not be the wintertime. Okay, that's just extra. So take heed, or these things will overcome you. Proverbs 22:3 tells us, a prudent man foreseeth the evil. How many times have you seen somebody today walking around like this? Right? A prudent man is scanning the horizon. Head on a swivel. A prudent man is not stuck in his phone looking like a victim to the bad guy who wants to take their money. Right? Don't walk around that way. Don't walk around looking like a victim. A prudent man is watching for the evil. And when he sees it, he has already seen it ahead of time and he hides himself. But the simple or the fool or the idiot pass on and they're punished. And the exact same verse pops up again in chapter 27, verse 12. I would assume that if God went to the trouble to make sure it was in there twice, that it's twice as important. Jesus said, take heed. Pay attention to what's going on in your world. The prudent man foreseeth the evil, hides himself, and is safe. Now, Jesus said, take heed. So I want to give you some practical response. We've talked a lot in the last couple of years about really bad things that are going on, and we're going to do that some more tonight. But I wanted to give you right up front some really practical responses to all this stuff that's going on. So you need to write these things down. First of all, let's watch out for one another. That's why he invented the church. That's why he birthed the church. Let's watch out for one another. We need to seek to have a church for which I could leave my billfold laying right there all week long and nobody would bother it. I ought to try that sometime. And it would be like the other things that have disappeared. We don't know who took them, so we can't get them back. But we need to watch out for each other. When somebody's getting a little bit depressed, when somebody's not being themselves, let's be a family. I think I put this first because I think this is huge. And then speaking of prepping, we need to be prepping all the time for what's coming. And I've made a short list of some things here that we need to pay attention to. So do you know what EDC is? What's in your pocket? What's in your billfold? Okay, everyday carry, EDC, everyday carry. Do you carry those things in your pocket for which you'd be able to function without the other stuff in your life? What do you carry? What's important enough that you carry if you were separate from your car, separate from any help, that you would have sufficient to do some things? What are those things that you need to do? You need to think through those things and figure out what you're going to carry in your pocket. Okay? So I carry a multi-tool in a pouch in my pocket every day. I have a flashlight. I have a pen. I have $20. I have a Band-Aid. I have a handcuff kit. No, don't even ask. I've got several things in here. I just carry it in my pocket. I may never need it, although I pretty much do every day need something out of there. And if you want to know how to carry it, I invented this. I should patent it and sell it. It's an easy way to carry. I just mentioned a whole bunch of things. I'm carrying them every day without even thinking about it. When I get up in the morning and go to work, I stick it in my pocket. If I get separated from everything, I've got a multi-tool. I've got a Band-Aid. If I get arrested, I've got a handcuff key. Anyway, so that's EDC. You need to think about what you need to be carrying every day if SHTF stuff hits the fan. And we're living in uncertain times when that could happen. Think about it. So what's a GHB? Does anybody know what a get-home bag is?
Like something you should keep in your car in case, your stuff, you got to run for it, whatever. You got
Yep.
your snacks, drinks, water.
Yep. You need to think through those things that you would want to have if you had to walk from here to home. Okay, there's a lot of considerations. And if there's a coronal mass ejection from the sun, which we have had before, that could knock out satellites, knock out communication. Actually, it could be strong enough that your vehicle won't run. Okay, if your car don't work, have you got a get-home bag in there that you'd have some things? A few snack bars, a little bit of water, a Band-Aid. There's a bunch of things you need to think through. Doesn't cost much to keep it in your vehicle, and you're ready with a get-home bag all the time. And then I just threw this one in for fun, an inch bag. Anybody have any idea what an inch bag is? Inch stands for I'm never coming home. I'm not sure how big that bag would be. Anyway, so practical things. How far do you let your gas gauge get down before you fill it up? If you let it get down below a half a tank, you're not a prudent person. When it gets to half full, fill it. It doesn't cost any extra. It costs you all the same for the miles you drive. And then, what if stuff hits the fan and that stuff is communism so bad you're not allowed to have a Bible? You need to have it, some of it, right up here. When that happens, if it ever happens, you'll be glad you did that. Memorize a verse a week, not hard to do. It's actually good for your brain. And I could use all that I could get. Cash. Trudeau, Canada, emergency, what do you call it? Emergency
powers.
What?
Emergency powers.
Emergency powers, thank you. He lifted those today, by the way. But one of the things that he's trying to make permanent about that, during the emergency powers, everything in the bank accounts were frozen and only those things could move that the state said could move. And you know why they did that? To freeze the money coming into the truck drivers. They froze their accounts. They're now trying to make that permanent. See, that's the way the government, they get a hold of something, they never let go of all of it. Whether it's taxes or laws or whatever it is. They don't ever do away with those things.
So, Washington, D.C. is putting the fences back up and bringing in troops. Do you suppose they're going to do something like that?
Well,
go up there?
So it was obvious to anybody, a prudent man anyway, thinking, was watching Canada, saying Biden and crew are going to watch and see how that works. If that works, that will become a template for here, refined. So what they're doing to the truckers now, And they told them they were going to do this. Not only are we going to disperse you, but we're going to hunt every one of you down. But let's not get off the point, which this is kind of funny actually. So they want control of the money. If that happens here in the United States and money's frozen, and it could happen for a lot of reasons, have you got your money, what little you've got, or however much you've got, is it in just one bank? That's probably not smart. If you got $500, you probably ought to have 250 of it in another bank. And you ought to have about 50 of it at home. Now, you figure out what that means. There's no protecting yourself against some of the things that are coming. Gold is not a protection. They can call that in. Cash is only worth what they say it is. If we go to a cashless society, and we are, you can't protect yourself completely. But these things will probably not happen in an overnight fashion, but freezing the banks for a week or two could happen. Do you have enough money at home that you could function for a couple of weeks if you couldn't get to your bank account? Or if they decide you're a terrorist, and if they watch my Rumble of these Wednesday nights, and they know you came here and heard me and you're friends with me, they might label you a terrorist. And I'm not really being very extreme in this. We know what they're doing to teachers, etc. We're coming to the day when if you're a Baptist and you believe the Bible and you believe things like the second coming of Jesus, you're too radical to be safely out in society. If they label you a terrorist and they go after your bank account, have you only got one? You might think about that. Okay, that's just a smattering of some of the things that I think you need to be thinking about. And I'm not trying to scare anybody, I'm trying to prepare you. And it will not cost you a dime to fill your tank when it gets to half full. It will not cost you anything to scripture memorization. It will not cost you anything to put it in 2 banks instead of 1. Put some under your mattress. It won't cost you anything to carry some things in your pocket. Flashlight, pocket knife. Now, I'm sensing that I'm throwing some things out there that you think is absolutely off the wall, off the chart, off the scale. I threw it out there for you to begin to pray about it and think about what's right for you to do, what's right for your family, what's right for what's coming. Okay. Another thing that I think practically we need to do. So we're not going to turn things back. We're not going to rescue the situation. That's not going to happen. The Antichrist, one of these days, is going to be revealed, and just before that, we're going to be raptured. There's no stopping that. So things are going to move in that direction. But we have the responsibility in America to speak up for freedoms. Right? So, littlest things, who knows what that means? I read that letter that the pastors wrote to Trudeau Sunday in our service. And I already got some feedback that encouraged some people that they had really been praying about that. Because, of course, it is coming. The truckers have already left California. They're headed towards Washington now. Who knows how it'll be? You know they're going to be peaceful. And I hadn't thought about this. This is just a little extra side note that I came across today. So you heard Trudeau say that there was a Nazi flag with the truckers in Canada, right? You heard that? And of course, he was spinning the obvious on that. But what if it was something else? And I have no idea. I'm just throwing it out there for you to think about. What if it was this guy brought this because Nazi-like things are coming to Canada? What if that was his statement? Now, I don't know. It was a really dumb thing to do if that's what he was trying to do. I mean, that was really dumb. There's no way that could not be misinterpreted. Because the first thing we would all think is, he's a skinhead Nazi, right? But what if that wasn't what he was thinking? Anyway, that freedoms. We need to speak up in all the ways that we can. Down at the coffee shop, at Thanksgiving dinner, everywhere we can. We need to stand up for our freedoms, and we need to tell people where we need to be as a nation. Okay. And then, of course, more important than all the rest is we need to speak up to warn the lost. What if that person you're going to meet for one time this week, you will only meet them one time, and then the stuff hits the fan? What if you only get one more shot at that person and the rapture takes place? We should think about that. Because if we fail to warn people, you know what the Bible says will happen to us? Their blood's on our hands. I know this is really serious. I'm sorry. Okay, another practical thing that we need to be thinking about, and I've had the deacons in our church thinking for a couple of years about this now, before COVID actually. Begin to think about networking strategies for yourself and our church. Before the rapture takes place, we could come to the place where Biden puts martial law into effect, and the crazy people come after you with a syringe and a police officer and all of this. What if it wasn't smart for us to meet openly as a church like this anymore? The church has known those days. Those were bad days for the church. They went underground. But they went. The church is alive today because they did. So we ought to think about, and I don't know where we're going to go as a church, but we need to maybe be thinking about a strategy for what if we needed to meet in homes with just 4 or 5 families in each one? And for yourself and your family. One of my biggest fears is that a coronal mass ejection, North Korea is able to explode a nuclear bomb over Kansas City. That's kind of you don't have to be too accurate to do that. And if they do, I'll no longer have any communication with my daughter who lives up north, my granddaughter who lives with them, my son-in-law. I'll no longer be able to talk to my daughter over in Illinois and family. And that may not sound like much to you, but just think about what that means. I haven't come up with a solution, so why am I telling you about the problem? Well, so I guess I could get a satellite phone, but that probably wouldn't work if a nuclear explosion happened. Okay, these are scary things to think about, but I believe we're headed towards the time when we need to think about some of these things. We're not there yet, but these things are approaching. And I can't tell you when the rapture is going to happen. So let's talk about some religions. Deadly religion number 1. And this is a religion that is killing people. Not going to kill people. It's killing people now. Climate change. I've been hearing about this ever since I went to school at CMSU when I was just a wee lad. And they were talking about in one class, one large, huge class I was in, this guy was talking about we're going to run out of food and there's going to be rioting and et cetera because of no water and et cetera. And this is all going to happen, I think he said 1975. Right? That mentality that was started then is what is behind George Soros, Justin Trudeau. It's Justin Trudeau, right? These guys all graduated literally from the same class. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. They all literally went to a school and graduated from the class, And climate change, it's not only not going away, it is now a religion for some people. It is their religion. So it's already costing lives. And they're not sad about that either. Because in climate change, we've got to get rid of a bunch of beef-eating human beings. That's kind of funny. So China has had the one-child policy most of my life. Mao brought it in. The one-child policy was, if it's a boy, let it live. If it's a girl, kill it. That's what they did. Now, they've got a problem. Been reading about that? China's got a problem. They've reached a point for which they don't have enough people for what they're doing going forward. All their businesses and et cetera. They're now global and they need a lot of people producing stuff. They don't have them. Now, that's a totally off-the-wall thing for most of us who grew up thinking that China is the most populated place in the world, which was not really ever true. It's just that it was that large, there were that many people. But I digress. So anyway, climate change is already costing lives and money and unnecessary aggravation. And before I'm done, we'll talk about how it's costing animals lives as well. So just some smattering of some examples. Climate change is deadly and it's religious to these people. The Texas power grid failure. Did anybody die in that? I didn't look that up. I wondered about it.
The winter they had
Mhm.
last year?
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
found people frozen
Yeah.
to death.
Yeah.
I don't remember how many.
That's because they were all in for these, not solar, but wind power instead of building the grid the way they needed to. Okay? This religion is killing people already. And then Biden's energy policies disaster. So there was some good news on this horizon, but before I get to the good news, we know about him shutting down the pipeline. And under Trump, and I'm not trumpeting Trump so much, it was a reality. Under Trump, we were for the first time in my life energy independent. I couldn't believe we did it so quick. I mean, it was almost miraculous. We were going to be exporting and controlling the market instead of the other way around. And under Biden, that's gone the other direction. So, how do you think that plays into Ukraine? Here's how it plays in. He wouldn't have even tried it if they had continued what under Trump they stopped the pipeline, the Europe pipeline. They wouldn't have even tried it. He shut down the U.S. pipelines and Nord Stream 2. That's supposed to be 2 words. I misspelled it. On the U.S. pipelines. So oil has now, what is it, $120 a barrel? What was it? Anybody heard today?
$92 a barrel today.
Okay, so it's close to 100. When Biden became president, fracking pretty much came to a stop. And I had actually thought in the back of my mind it's because all these climate change religion nuts had passed some law or executive order, but that wasn't what it was. Fracking's still just as illegal as it ever was. But and I remember this from a couple of years ago. It takes, I think it was $48 or $49 a barrel. They had to be able to sell oil for $48 or $49 a barrel in order to break even. So fracking stopped because oil got so cheap. Crude oil got so cheap. Now at 92, you said? $92 a barrel? There's money to be. They're going back to fracking. They're going back in huge numbers. Whatever you think about the fracking, that helped us be energy independent. And if we had been energy independent and stopped the money that Putin was going to make off of that pipeline, Germany wouldn't be afraid to stand against him. He would never have come into Ukraine. He'd never even tried it. So is anybody going to die because of that? I suspect there were people who died today because of the shelling that was done by the Russian separatists into Ukraine. That's already going on. Been going on. They've been having a civil war for 7 years now, or something like that. And they've been empowered now and given weapons by Putin. And it's all because, I'm sorry to put it off on him, but Biden's energy policies, what he has done, empowered Putin. People are dying in Ukraine because of this climate change religion. This is not funny stuff. This is real. People are losing their lives over climate change. And I just saw this headline today. Don't need to read the article. The headline says it all. CBS News claims Ukraine crisis is to blame for increased gas prices. Wow, that was quick. It was high last week and it hadn't even started. Ukraine crisis has caused inflation.
That has nothing to do with OPEC.
What kind of an idiot would even buy a headline like that? Half of America. Huh. Wow. Solar farms. Out in the deserts where there ain't nobody, they've built, have you seen pictures of these? They are huge solar panels. I mean, they cover hundreds of acres. Bigger than the farm I farmed. Over 100, we had over 100 acres, and these things are bigger. I can't even imagine. You can see pictures of it. Go look at it. Now, this is funny to me, but it's not really funny. Can you imagine 20 feet over, 50 feet over the top of all of these solar panels that are reflecting the sun's energy? Birds that fly across are cremated instantly. Now, I say that's funny, not if you're a bird. And I don't like to see any animals hurt either, so it's not funny for that reason. It's just these people shoot themselves in the foot. And then they shoot a lot of other people along with what they're doing. So this religion is a deadly religion. Climate change is not funny anymore. It was something we could throw off, yeah, those nuts. All this. And I'm just scratching the surface. So the next power grab. You think COVID-19? I wish I hadn't said that. The big C was a power grab. We're all agreed that it was a big power grab. I mean, they shut the country down. They shut the world down. And they've tasted blood. And the next power grab is going to be climate change. Klaus, what's his last name? My mind went blank. They've taken this and they're going to make it a template for the next day. Bill Gates, George Soros, these people are all up, and they're even talking about it openly. They're on platforms. They're talking about it. I heard Bill Gates talking today.
Is it Klaus Schwab?
Schwab. Thank you. Of all the things I have misplaced, I miss my mind the most. Yes.
If you were to go up into Iowa, I think they have spark thermometers there that control the temperature in your home.
Oh, yeah.
The power company. I don't know if it's over the whole state, but I do know there are places where they have that up there, and they control your thermostat.
Yeah. Do you live in Raytown?
Do I?
Yeah.
No.
I was thinking y'all lived in Raytown. Where do you live?
Independent.
Independence. Okay. I know if you're on what used to be KCP&L, what is that now? Evergy. there's a lot of that already going on, and they want everybody to be on that.
The Nest, if you have the Nest, you can get it cheap from the energy company, but that's one of the things, they will change your temperature.
If you get the thermostat, they'll give it to you, but along with that, they're going to have it set so that they have control of it.
We did that one year during the summer, and they would jack your temperature up. They couldn't get our air conditioner to turn back on because of the way they were handling that kind of a system. It was terrible. Don't do it.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I got an advertisement email today from Evergy. They wanted me to get on that. It sounded so alluring,
It's not.
but I didn't do it. Not going to do it. Anyway, this whole climate change thing is going to be a way to control everything. They want to digitize everything, as we've talked about, and they're going to do it. It's just a matter of how quick or slow they're going to be able to do it. Religion number 2, that is a deadly religion, is the gay agenda. That is a religion to these people. Let's talk about that. So I want to play you just a couple of minutes of a video clip. Brandon Halthus from Rock Harbor Church. If you want to look on Rumble for him, that's a good place to follow.
I like that
Huh?
guy.
Yeah.
I like that guy.
Yeah, he's good. A little radical. I think that's why I like him. Anyway, short video clip, and then we're going to have to end it there. I'll have to tell you about this next week further because our time is gone. And I've got a couple of other religions beyond that that are deadly. Listen up. This is not him. This is a First Baptist Church that's having him. But he's going to be the one speaking ultimately to us.
This is a new thing. I just saw it this week. Somebody shared it with me this morning, actually. Teachers Exposed.
Transition
They
closet.
now have in the Oakland City Schools a thing called the transition closet. What's the transition closet? Well, if you are a young person and you are struggling with gender identity, you can now dress as your birth sex, come to school, and change into the opposite sex clothes, so your parents don't know. What do you think?
Okay, so this has been going on for some time. Let me tell you what's happening. A lot of the schools, the teachers and administrations have made a concerted effort not to tell the parents what they're doing. So even in California, even in our local high school district, this is what was going on. A situation happened where the girl was struggling academically. She comes in, and the principal and the vice principal are addressing her with a male pronoun. Okay? So the grandma's sitting there saying, wait a second, you keep calling her, I don't know what the name, let's just say Ed. You keep calling her Ed, but her name's Susan. And they figured out that, the grandma figured out that the administration was going behind the grandma's back, who had parental authority, and allowing the girl to transition to a he when she was on campus, not he, but she. And the unaware was the grandma that this was happening. So what has happened in the districts and schools is they are doing something behind the parental authority's back. What was said in that meeting after the grandma left, between the administration and the principal,
Listen
was,
to this.
look, we got to handle this differently. When she's in front of her parental authority, let's call her the she, but when she's at school, we'll call her the he. So we have a complete undermining of parental authority, and this is just the next step. And basically, medically, there's no parental authority. You can have an abortion, right? And now you can change your clothes and be a transsexual, and all with the support of the school. So I'm telling you this, and John will tell you, the public schools are the most dangerous place to send your kids now. Because the administration is not respecting you as a parent, and in fact, they don't want you there as a parent. They think they're smarter than you. So Something to be aware about and really deciding as a parent or grandparent where I put my kids in school.
And you have children in high school and middle school.
Yes, I do.
And in California.
In California, but we send them to private schools because I am not about to send them to a public school because all the public schools are woke.
It's deadly. You hear about people who are transitioning, and if you dig into the numbers, they commit suicide at a very high number. That's not because straight people like me are making them feel so bad. It's because they're in such an environment that at that young age, certainly, they can't handle the insanity. They can't handle it. But they've got teachers and administrators encouraging them, but there's this insanity that they're living with, and they can feel that things are just not right. And I can't take it anymore. And there are those in authority who, in interesting ways, through music and other ways, are saying, suicide's a way out. Hmm?
The one good thing that came out of C is that parents are realizing there are more than one choice for school and education for children. And public education does not want parents to know that there are choices out there. We've had to research what we can do, and we have made some decisions for our daughter for next year. And that kind of stuff just puts the nail in the coffin that this is what God wants us to do. But the federal government, the state government, public education does not want parents to know that there are many, many options. Way more than there ever was. That's the only good thing that I can say about what we've just gone through as a country for the last 2 years.
Well, you're right. And years ago, I remember finding out years ago that the amount of federal money that actually goes to local school systems is not that much. Local school systems can easily say, we're not going to do what the federal government guidelines are and do their own thing. They don't need their money. But everybody thinks they do. And the school boards, of course, these are bureaucrats. They're not going to get rid of any money. That pays their salary. So anyway, we'll have to take this back up. We're just getting started. And this is just the second of several religions that have popped up. And they are religions. They've got their hymn books. They've got their doctrine. They've got their leaders. And they are deadly. It's no longer funny anymore. People are losing their lives because of these religions. Okay, we'll have to stop there.